class, and welcome back after your vacation for Christmas and the New Year. I hope that you are rested, as we'll rejoin this class with ancient Greece being the subject matter that we'll be exploring today. In this video, we'll have a look at one of the early Greek civilizations, and it was based on the island of Crete. Now, if you turn your textbooks to page 167 and you see the big map there, you'll see exactly where Crete is. It's right there to the south of the main Greek landmass and the many islands that forms the Greek nation on the eastern side of the Mediterranean. You'll watch this video on the Minoan Empire that took root there in Crete. And then afterwards, you'll be given this sheet here. This is an activity sheet which you will be tackling. It's basically a simple crossword, and it's designed to challenge your memory on some of the items that are raised in this video. So with that in mind, we'll have a look on this video right now concerning the Minoan Empire.
The ancient Athenians tell a story about a hero named Theseus. In this story, the city of Athens was required to send young men and maidens to the land of Minos, the king of Crete. There the unfortunate youngsters would be cast into the labyrinth, an underground maze inhabited by a horrible monster, half man, half bull, named the Minotaur. According to the myth, Theseus killed the Minotaur and freed Athens from the cruel tribute of King Minos. Much like the story of Troy, most people in the modern age considered this tale a complete fabrication. Yet one fellow, an explorer and archaeologist named Sir Arthur Evans, was not so certain. In 1900, Sir Arthur Evans began digging in the island of Crete, in a place known as Knossos. In the course of his dig, Evans uncovered a huge complex of interlinking rooms, much like a maze or a labyrinth. The palace was adorned all around with symbolic bull horns, known as horns of consecration. Digging deeper, Evans uncovered a throne room, and wall paintings of bulls and bull jumpers. Evans' imagination immediately leapt to the myth of Theseus. Everything was there. The interlinking rooms must be the labyrinth. The bull horns and paintings must be where the Athenians got the idea of the Minotaur. The throne room must belong to a king. Evans concluded that this must be the palace of King Minos. He named the people he had discovered Minoans, after this mythical king. As Evans continued to dig, he found other things, including axe heads and records written on clay tablets. Let us examine Evans's many discoveries one by one and see what they can tell us about Minoan civilization. Let's begin with the palace itself. Knossos is but one of about half a dozen such palaces on the island of Crete. The term palace may be something of a misnomer. A palace implies a private residence for a lord or king. However, the king's quarters make up only a small portion of the whole complex at Knossos, which seems to have been dedicated almost entirely to storage. Analysis of pottery shards has revealed that these Minoan palaces were, in fact, massive storehouses, where raw food was brought to be processed and stored. In this light, the palace at Knossos seems more like an overgrown silo than a residence for kings. So what were the Minoans collecting all this food for? Well, there are two obvious answers. They might have been collecting the food and other goods to store in case of disaster or invasion. They also may have been collecting it for trade. There is good evidence that the Minoans were first and foremost a trading people. Minoan culture really seems to have taken off in the early Bronze Age, around 2700 BCE, and quickly spread across the Mediterranean. Archaeologists have discovered Minoan wares all along the Mediterranean coast, from Egypt to Spain. Their most important trade goods seem to have been saffron, a yellow spice still much treasured today, and tin, which, when mixed with copper, creates bronze. This may help us to understand why the Minoan civilization thrived during the Bronze Age and fell from glory during the Iron Age, when bronze, and therefore tin, was no longer needed in such quantities. The Minoans seem to have built something of a trading empire. They set up outposts on islands across the Mediterranean, including the islands of Tira and Rhodes and the Cyclades. They also established outposts on mainland Greece. Running a trade empire requires a lot of things. First and foremost is organization. Such organization is impossible without writing. The Minoans went through a couple writing systems before getting the process down. They seem to have started with a form of hieroglyphs borrowed from the Egyptians. They later picked up a form of the Phoenician alphabet, which Evans named Linear A. Linear A would later give rise to Linear B, the first writing system found among the Greeks. Since we know the Greek language very well, scholars were able to translate Linear B soon after its discovery. Yet they have had much more trouble with Linear A. Assuming the characters in the Greek Linear B represent the same sounds in Minoan Linear A, we actually have a vague idea of what the Minoan language sounded like. Unfortunately, no one has been able to make much sense of the Minoan language thus far. Linear A remains one of the enduring mysteries of the classical world. Since we cannot read Minoan records, we have to depend on Minoan art to tell us about their culture. Yet without written records, art can only tell us so much. Historians have offered a wide variety of interpretations of Minoan art, and few of them agree on much of anything. I will therefore show you characteristic examples of Minoan art, and leave the interpretation up to you. The Minoans left us some gorgeous murals. Most of these murals are simply pretty, like this dolphin mural, these ladies, and this Dr. Seuss-like landscape. Yet some of these murals are informative, like this mural depicting Minoans sailing from one island to another, reinforcing what we already know about Minoan trade. Or this mural from Santorini, depicting Minoan women picking crocuses to gather saffron. Other murals raise more questions than answers, like this mural of a man in what appears to be a ceremonial headdress. Is he a king? Is he a priest? Is he a sacrificial victim? We don't know. Even more confusing is this famous mural of Minoan men and women apparently doing handsprings off the back of an enraged bull. Was this a sport, a rite of passage, or some deeply religious ceremony? We simply do not know. The only thing we're sure of is that the white figures are supposed to represent women, and the red figures are supposed to represent men. The bull jumper mural brings us to one of the most easily identifiable aspects of Minoan art, the bull. The other is the axe. These two symbols, the bull and the axe, appear again and again and again in Minoan art. Besides the bull horns decorating the walls of Minoan palaces, and the murals we've seen, the Minoans also depicted bulls in ceremonial vessels, and even little figurines. The Minoan axe, or labris as it is called, is even more prevalent. It shows up in jewelry, ceremonial axe heads, relief sculptures, and even just rough symbols carved into stone. As I mentioned, we're not sure what all these bulls and axes are about, any more than we're sure how to read Linear A. The history of Minoan civilization is riddled with such mysteries. Yet perhaps the greatest mystery of the Minoans is what happened to them. After over 1,000 years dominating the seas of the eastern Mediterranean, Minoan civilization declined sharply around 1450 BCE. Archaeologists disagree on what caused this decline. Some have claimed, as we noted above, that the advent of the Iron Age meant that people no longer needed so much bronze, and thus the market for Minoan tin declined, and with it, the Minoans. Others attribute the fall of Minoan civilization to the rise of Mycenaean civilization, which came to dominate the island of Crete a few decades later. These historians tend to characterize the Minoans as peaceful flower children, brought down by the warlike Mycenaeans. Yet the most popular explanation for the disappearance of the Minoans is the catastrophic explosion of the volcanic island of Tira, modern-day Santorini. Where this volcano once stood, there is now nothing but a massive chasm, one of the deepest points in the whole Mediterranean. An explosion of this magnitude could have produced a tsunami of epic proportions, which would have slammed into the island of Crete less than 100 miles away. Yet none of these explanations have been proven, and so the collapse of Minoan civilization, like their art, their writing, and most of their civilization, remains a mystery to this day.